Hi everybody, it's Laura. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made using the Shimmerz August Color Kitz collection. I'm starting off this layout with a mixed media background. I have a piece of 120-pound smooth white cardstock. I put some Liquitex gesso on it, and now I'm spreading a beautiful color that was included in the kit this month. This color is called Love Ocean Number 9, and it is a Vibez. A lot of my favorite scrapbookers like to use this technique. It's the packaging technique. I am taking some plastic, I'm adding the color to the plastic, and then I'm squishing it down against my background paper. I'm trying to make kind of a splotch of color in the background. It turns out in the end to look a lot like an asymmetrical heart. And although that was not what I was going for, I ended up liking the shape in the background. And I wanted to mention that if you place an order with Shimmerz Paints and you use my name in the comments box, you'll receive a free gift with your order. I'm going to add another color of blue to the layout. I decided to add a Vibez called Blue Jeans. This is more of a, I would say, royal blue kind of color. And although I wanted to add two different colors of blue, I wanted the background to be a little bit more turquoise than a traditional blue color. So although I like the touches of the Blue Jeans color, I went back in and added a little bit more of the Love Ocean Number 9 because that's the color that I associate with tropical waters, and this is going to be a tropical themed layout. I used my heat tool to dry the background, and then once the background was completely dry, I began to add some splatters. And I love to add splatters to mixed media backgrounds. In this case, it makes me think of water splatters, so I wanted to add lots and lots of splatters, and you'll see that I do add quite a few of them. And I use the heat tool to dry all the splatters, and then I go back in with a little bit more color. I thought that I would extend the color a little bit more toward the bottom because the color is almost touching the top. So I thought that it would make sense to have it go a little bit further down the page toward the bottom. Not touching the bottom, but a little bit closer to it. Next, I'm going to add some modeling paste. I use some Master's Choice modeling paste and I mix it together with some thick body white acrylic paint. It's about 2 parts modeling paste, 1 part paint. You could use any brand of modeling paste, and you could also use just regular white acrylic paint. And the reason for the white acrylic paint is to make the modeling paste a little bit more of a crisp white. Some of the modeling pastes are a little bit more gray. This one is pretty white, but I really like the addition of the white paint. I think it really makes the modeling paste stand out against the paint that's in the background. And the stencil that I'm using was made by Anthology, and it's called Chevron. The lines on this stencil kind of reminded me of waves. They don't look exactly like waves, but I thought that it was close enough. And the layout that I'm making is not beach themed. I'm going to include a picture of a flower that my daughter took while she was in DR 2 summers ago. And so I thought that since the whole album that this is going to be in has a lot of beach pictures, I'm trying to keep somewhat of a common theme throughout all the layouts, and water and tropical flowers and leaves are some of the elements that I'm including on all of the layouts. I wanted there to be some white splatters in the background, so I started adding splatters in the traditional way where I tap the base of the straw that has the white paint on it, and that made some not large splatters, but a little bit larger splatters, but I wanted a whole bunch of tiny splatters, so I decided to use a toothbrush. So I added a lot of water to the paint, and then I just ran my finger along the bottom of the toothbrush, and it sprayed the white paint all over in little tiny droplets, and that's what I was looking for. And now here I am adding more of the splatters of the paint Love Ocean Number 9. I really enjoyed making this layout. I've been spending my summer doing a lot of non-crafty related tasks. I've been cleaning. We are having some work done in our house, so things are all out of order, and I've been trying to arrange things and make things a little more organized so that I can find them. And though I really love the results, organizing and painting and cleaning, they take up a lot of time and they're definitely not as much fun as creating a scrapbooking layout. So I was glad to take a break and do some creating. The embellishments that I'm going to be using are fussy cut from the coloring sheet that's in this month's kit, and they have some black lines and outlines, so I thought that I definitely wanted to make sure that I use some black stamping in the background of this layout so that it would go with the embellishments. So I started off with a grid stamp. I bought a set of grid stamps on Amazon, and this is my favorite one. And then I also added some dots. The dot stamp that I used is a Tim Holtz clear stamp. And now I'm adding some text to the background using this very tiny Prima stamp. And I often find that you can't go wrong by adding grids, dots, or text stamps to backgrounds. So I have a number of the stamps that I use the most in a little bag so that I have them handy. And then I also try to go into my stash and pick out a few others and try those out on my layout so that I don't always use the same stamps over and over again. But I do tend to use a lot of the same stamps on my backgrounds just because some of them work on pretty much any layout. And I like to use archival or Staz On Ink. That way, when I add splattering over the top of them, I am not worried that it's going to cause the ink to bleed or run. And on this layout, I'm using my favorite Staz On Ink in jet black to stamp in the background. So I put the background aside to dry completely, and now I'm working on my photo and also a tag that I planned to include on my layout, but it didn't make it onto the final page. I used a tag die that I had in my stash and that watermelon paper that's so cute to cut out the tag. And then for my photo, which measures 3 by 4 inches, I used a stitched rectangle die from Creative Arts to make a white mat, and then I also made an orange mat that's a little bit bigger. And since I realized the bottom of the tag would be covered up, I cut off the bottom of the tag, and I am going to use that paper to create photo corners a little bit later on. I have my photo mounted now in the upper left-hand corner of the layout, and these are the elements I'm going to be using on the page. So as I mentioned, most of these were part of the coloring sheet that we got in this month's kit. I used my Shimmerz Paints and I painted all of them in, and then I fussy cut them out. And I also used a couple of the die cuts from the kit. I use the sun that I have in the upper right hand corner. Whenever there are suns in ephemera packs, I always tend to use those right away. I think that every summer layout looks nice with a big sun on it. And then I also incorporated the yellow and white flower that I have underneath the palm trees, which is also a die cut. Using all of these embellishments, I create 3 clusters on my layout. The biggest one is the one with the sun and the palm trees, and then I have another fairly large one at the bottom of the page, and then a smaller one to the right of the photo. There were 2 pineapples that I really liked and wanted to include on this layout, but I just couldn't find the right spot for them, so I'll have to use those on another layout. I also included some fish and a seahorse on the layout. It might seem a little bit weird to have fish and a seahorse mixed in with things like flowers and palm trees and flamingos, but I just liked the way they looked on the page, so I decided to go ahead and add them in there. I guess the arrangement of the embellishments doesn't have to be realistic. I added a seashell in with the flowers to the right-hand side of the photo, and then there's a starfish next to the palm trees, and there's a fish at the bottom to the left of the flowers. So I think that it all worked, even though maybe it's not exactly the way you would see it in real life. I added some embellishments to the lower left-hand corner of the photo. I have one of the dots that comes in the kit there, which happened to be a really pretty pink hibiscus flower, and I also had one of those pineapples there, but I ended up taking them away. I didn't end up putting anything in that corner, although I kept trying to add different embellishments there. So now, in general, I'm happy with the arrangement of the embellishments, although I do move them around a little bit throughout the process of attaching them down to the page. And as always, I like to give just a little bit of dimension to some of the elements on my page. So I am popping up the flowers at the bottom, those yellow flowers, and then I'm going to cluster all the other embellishments around those yellow flowers. And I popped up my photo on some foam too. I always think that's the most important thing to add dimension to. I add some adhesive to the backs of all of these embellishments in this cluster, being especially careful with the flamingos since their legs and their necks are so thin. And the orange and yellow fish that's in this cluster that I'm working on now, it does stay in this general area, but I end up including it more with my title than with this cluster. But for right now, I'm going to place it to the left-hand side of the flamingos. I had mentioned earlier about how I was very happy to spend some time crafting. So I really enjoyed making this layout, but I also enjoyed, before I started making this layout, coloring in the coloring sheet that came with this month's kit. I feel like you almost can't go wrong coloring in things like flamingos and flowers. And then after I cut out all of these pictures, I had a really nice stack of ephemera to use on this layout. I added some foam to the back of the fish, which started out at the bottom of the layout, and then I temporarily moved him up to that spot on the left-hand side of the photo, still trying to get an embellishment in that area. Then I moved on to the cluster with the palm trees. I popped up those pink flowers, and then I attached all the other elements down. I didn't include all of that footage. And then I added a few more things to the layout. I added another fish. I thought it was nice to have one fish facing to the left and one facing to the right. Then I relocated that little starfish to the cluster at the bottom of the page. I thought it could use a little bit of orange. And then I thought I'd already popped up my photo, but it seems that I hadn't done that yet. So this is where I add some fun foam to the back of my photo. And then I added some adhesive to the back. And then I put it right back where I had it in that same spot. And now I'm going to reassemble all of those elements to the right-hand side of the photo. I was thinking of putting that cluster at the top of the photo, but then I decided I was just going to keep it on the right-hand side, although I do add a number of embellishments to the top of the photo by the end of this process. And the only thing that I pop up in that cluster is that yellow and white flower, and then I add all the other embellishments around that flower. And at this point, I'm still trying to include that pineapple on the page. Doesn't it just seem like that would be the perfect embellishment for a page like this? But I just couldn't find a spot for it, as I mentioned, so I ended up having to remove it. And then I added two toucans to the page. The one on the left was from the coloring sheet, so I painted that one in. And then the one on the right was one of the die cuts. And I have to tell you, I really liked the way those two birds looked on the page. I just thought that they added just the right little touch that the layout needed. There was a piece of pattern paper that I fussy cut. I fussy cut every last flower and leaf from it. And while I used the majority of those fussy cut pieces on another layout, I did use quite a few of the smaller leaves to embellish all of the clusters. I think these leaves really filled out the clusters and made them look even more tropical. And you can see that I'm still trying to get that pineapple on the page, and I'm still trying to put an embellishment in the lower left-hand corner of my photo, but I am going to remove it in a little while. After I tucked a lot of those leaves into all three clusters, I started working on my title. I'm using the title Sunny Days. I actually got the idea for this title from one of the die cuts that's in the pack, but I used that die cut on another layout, and I just thought on this layout, these letters filled out this space a little bit more. And the name of this thicker pack was called Charming. So then I did something kind of weird. You could see that I added some more of the blue color in the upper left-hand corner. I don't know why I ended up doing that. What I do by the end of the layout is I go back into that area where I added the blue paint and I add some gesso over the top of it and I make it look pretty much the way that it looked a few moments ago. For some reason, I just thought that I had to extend that area of color, and it really didn't work out. But luckily with gesso, you can fix most things in a mixed media background. So that's what I end up doing, and you'll see that in the final layout. And I decided not to add the footage of me adding or getting rid of this blue color so the video wouldn't be super long. I added some photo corners and some pearls to the photo corners, and then I moved the fish down to the title, and now this layout is complete, and here are some close-ups. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it and got some ideas or maybe a little bit of inspiration, and I hope that you have some creative time very soon. In the description box, there's a link to the Shimmerz website and also to this month's Color Kitz collection. You can check out their beautiful pattern papers and paints and all the other products they have in the Shimmerz shop. And don't forget, if you put my name in the comments when you place an order, you'll receive a free gift. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.